Lots of great ways to make money in real estate, but rather than focus on saving your way to success, what if you could increase the income of a single family house? Here to talk to us about that, let's welcome back to the Real Estate Guys, our friend Isabelle Guarino. Hey, Isabelle.
Hey there, excited to be here.
Yes, great to have you here. And, so many folks are dealing with the realities of interest rates being up and insurance being up and costs being up. And I think while it is completely prudent to focus on lowering your expenses where you can, the other side of the coin is more interesting. How can we increase our income? And you can't just raise the rents. But what you guys do is a very clever mechanism to get the income up a lot. Tell us about it.
Yes. So we show people how to take a single family home and turn it into a residential assisted living home for seniors. So potentially there's some homes that, listeners have already in their portfolio where they currently have a family living in there making a couple $100 a month. And just like you said, you can only raise rent so much. This is an opportunity to potentially use that same piece of real estate, but instead of a family living in it, you maybe have 6, 10, 12 seniors living in that home, paying you, $5, 6, 7, $8,000 a month, because it's not just the house they're paying for. They're paying for room, board, activities, and 24/7 care. So it's kind of a business in a home, but it's a way to take something that you already have and really crank up that cash flow.
And it's been awesome watching many of our listeners over the years turn this into a reality. Yeah. And it takes a little bit of study and a little bit of education, and you'll get a bunch of that today. But first of all, I think we have to break a paradigm. When, you think about assisted living, you think about the 3-story or 4-story building with a couple hundred guests and a common dining room. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a single family home, typically 1 story, but doesn't have to be, in a nice neighborhood. And it is absolutely possible, legal and ethical, for that home to house not one family of 5 or 6, but a bunch of independent seniors.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think there's a big misconception that when you think of assisted living, you only think of those commercial facilities. But what we're doing is kind of the Airbnbs to hotels, right? The commercial facilities are those hotels. It's what we've known and trusted over the years. But people are looking for something different. They want something that's not home-like. It's a home. And many people can't afford to stay in their own home. So this is that great alternative where you're still in the neighborhood, you're still in an actual home, but it is a shared space with those multiple seniors in the home. And it's fully legal, just like you said. These are licensed through the state. They know what we're doing. They're allowed in all 50 states. And because of the Federal Fair Housing Act, they're even allowed in every neighborhood, including neighborhoods that have HOAs. So we're a protected class, and that's a beautiful thing when you get into the niche real estate space, because there's a lot of NIMBYism, right? People saying not in my backyard. And so this is a really cool way to use real estate for just something unique and different.
A house couple down the street from us have 3 teenagers, and there's cars and people coming and going and parked out in front. Meanwhile, across the town, there's a small assisted living home where there's not a bunch of cars coming and going. There's a bunch of noise. There's not as many deliveries. It actually is pretty stealth when you think about it.
100%. I say that all the time. My neighbors are the same way. A bunch of teenage kids who got 6 cars out front and all this chaos. And I'm like, my care homes are quiet. They're great neighbors, and they're the best neighborhood watch. I mean, seniors love to just park it in front of the window and watch what's going on. You've got 24/7 awake staff. So talk about having, eyes on the neighborhood. We're great neighbors. I really think so.
Years ago, your amazing father, the late, great Gene Guarino, showed me one of the homes. And when we walked through it, okay, that day there was a little bus that pulled up. But most of the time, it's just a well-manicured, cared-for home. The owners can afford to keep the home nicely for the reasons we'll talk about. And the people were delightful. Now, the reality of assisted living is people get to an age where they just need a little more help. This is the need that serves. Can you speak to that part of the equation?
Yeah, most people are not moving into assisted living for fun, right? You're moving in because it's no longer safe for you to live alone. You need help with 3 to 5 activities of daily living. So that could be getting up out of a chair, bathing, toileting, eating, taking medication. All those different things are what seniors need help with by the time they move into assisted living. The average stay is about 3.5 years. So they are with you for quite some time, but it is definitely end of life care. So this is something that if you don't have an opportunity to quit your job and go take care of your loved one full time, and you don't want to put them in one of those large communities, this could be that perfect in between where they get that opportunity and they're paying basically the same rates, if not less, than a large community, but getting a lot more hands-on care.
Well, and as we'll talk about, there's a lot of places that income comes from, and not everybody is in the same level of care based on what they can afford. But
Yep.
you guys kind of target a market that makes a ton of sense. Let's talk about the experience from the person that lives there. So someone comes in, they need a little more help than maybe the kids are able to provide, or they can't take care of themselves in their own home. So they're a candidate to come and stay in a home like this. They're with other people in a home. They're social with other people their age or close to it in a home. But what is provided in this situation?
So when you're paying to live in an assisted living home, you're paying for your room, right? Your activities. We have a pretty robust activities calendar, food as much as you want, as much as you need, and all of that extra care. So if you need help reminding, to take your medications, if you need help brushing your teeth or eating, toileting, that's what you're paying for, which is why the rates in the care home are so high, because caring for a senior is, a pretty intensive job. And so you are going to pay for that.
And this is not the same as a hospital. There aren't doctors and nurses. The standard level of care is pretty basic, as you've mentioned, but it does mean it's a business.
Yep.
Now, in a minute, we'll talk about the fact that you don't have to be the person running the business if you're the owner of the property. That's an interesting way to invest. But imagine that someone says, yeah, I could see myself with a home like this or a few homes like this. What does that care look like? Where do you find those people? How do they get paid? How much time are caregivers in the home?
Caregivers are there 24/7 caring for the seniors. And that's why, as a real estate investor, you can be hands off or more passive because you are not the one doing the caring and the cooking and the cleaning and all of this stuff. Your caregivers are. So when you start a care home, you hire a licensed administrator. And in the real estate world, we call that a property manager. But they're doing all of that day to day, hiring, firing, training, onboarding of your caregivers. They're marketing and touring the new families to welcome those new residents and just taking care of all of the basic things, whether that's social media, marketing, anything that's happening within the home to kind of keep the business afloat. So that licensed administrator really does it all. And then those licensed caregivers take care of the seniors 24/7. They don't live in the home, it's shift work, they come and go. But that makes sure that the seniors, when they need support, if they fall or get injured or just need help doing something, someone's there for them, but it doesn't have to be you, the owner operator.
Yeah, I love that. So one model would be for a real estate investor to find a suitable home and then look for someone who wants to come in and do that management work so that they own the home and the business, but they really outsource this much like you would a property manager. But it's even possible for a real estate investor to be completely hands off and just the landlord and essentially lease to someone who wants to be the owner operator.
Absolutely. So that's a whole nother angle where, the first one we talked about, you might get down to 5 to 10 hours a week. It's still quite passive, but if you want to be completely passive, then that looks like finding the right piece of real estate and renovating it so that it's suitable for assisted living, then leasing it to someone who's going to operate the business in your home. Now, you're not making as much income, but you're still holding that appreciating asset, and you might be making up to 2 times the fair market rent. they're willing to pay you that higher multiple because you've done the hard work of getting the home ready to go. So they're paying for speed. They get to come in and pretty much set up business day one and start cash flowing faster than maybe if they had to do it themselves. So both of them are great angles to maximize real estate you may already have or a potential new investment property that you want to buy and use for this specific purpose.
Yeah, it's a great point. A real estate investor would have the wherewithal to come up with a down payment, qualify for the loan, spend the capex, the money necessary to get the property into shape. We'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. And then really not want to run the business. And yet, there's two things about it. One, the durability of the income, meaning that that business, whose business it is to take in these seniors and care for them, they're a lot more likely to pay their rent than even an individual family is. Yeah. And there's lots of income sources, as we'll talk about here in a second. So I like that. And I also like the fact that they generally do receive a little bit of a premium. So it's probably not as much as it would be if you ran the business, but it is a little more than you would receive if you just turned it in to a single family house like we're used to. But you mentioned earlier there might be 6 or 8 or even 10 residents. If you think about most of the houses in your neighborhood, they probably aren't 10-bedroom homes. Tell us about how you take an existing house and what has to be done to it physically for this to work.
So for example, one of the homes that we got when we first started, it was about 5,800 square feet and it was a 6-bedroom, 5-bath home. So in Arizona, where we're located, I'm allowed to have 10 residents in a home. Now we could double them up in those bedrooms, but now I'm going to get less from each resident and it's harder to market a shared bedroom than it is a private bedroom. Yeah. So we instead, did a renovation. We didn't break down any outside walls or do any additions, but instead just chopped up the home differently to add more bedrooms and bathrooms. Now it's not pad split, right? You still want to maximize the space and have a living room, dining room, kitchen, all these other regular things we'd have in a home, but we just want to add more bedrooms and bathrooms. So now that home is a 10-bedroom, 10-bath home. The square footage is the same, and each senior gets their own private bedroom, private bathroom, so I can maximize the income. It's easier for me to market, and the seniors are happier because they get their own private space.
So let's talk about that, because imagine I do have 10 seniors. There's got to be a vacancy factor like there is in anything. So maybe at any given time you have 8 or 7 or 9 seniors. But I know a lot of the homes that your students run stay pretty full because they're in demand. But let's do the math on that a little bit. It's going to vary based on area. It's going to vary based on amenities. But how is the income going to compare to, in the same neighborhood, a home that just has a family staying in there and paying one rent check?
So in that example where we can have 10 residents, currently the average cost in our country today to live in an assisted living home is $5,900 per month per senior. It's gone up 87% over the last 20 years, and we project it's just going to keep going up and up and up. But let's just call it $6,000 for easy math. If you had 10 residents at $6,000, that's $60,000 coming in every month. But you don't get to keep that all, right? You've got to pay for the mortgage. You got to pay for your care staff, your food, build in that 10% vacancy, all of that good stuff. Let's say mortgage is $10,000 a month because it's a nice home in a nice part of town. And let's say to run the business, it costs you $40,000 a month. This one home is now letting you keep as your, gross profit $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year. So you could have a single family there where you're making, a couple $100 or maybe even $1,000 a month. Okay, woohoo, right? But the floor goes out, the AC needs repair, the roof needs something, and there's your profit for the whole year. Or you could have the same home bringing you in $10,000 a month, and you're serving your community. You're bringing a service to your market that maybe doesn't exist. And the whole other factor we haven't even mentioned is if you have a senior loved one in your life, whoever needs this care and assistance, you now don't have to go hunt for somewhere else for them to go. You get to move them right into your home that has the best care, the best food, the best quality. They get to live for free, and you get to continue cash flowing. So it's a solution for your own family. It's a way to create generational wealth and build an appreciating asset and get cash flow, which we all want cash flow right now. Because like we said, we can save our way till we're blue in the face, but at some point, there's only two ways to get out of this rat race, and it's save yourself out of it, which is very difficult, or learn how to generate more income. And this might be that opportunity.
We're talking about getting more income from the same single family house. And we have Isabelle Guarino with us. And for years, Isabelle, you've been helping people understand this business, which is why you know so much about it. You're in the business, you see it day to day. But I know when people first hear about it, like I did, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And then you start to think about, yeah, but she's mentioned the word license and I have to have employees. And that means there's schedules. And let's talk about the reality of that, because I know many of your students want to be actively in the business. So they're going to learn how to find these people, what you have to pay them, what the licensing part looks like. Take us through some of that.
Yeah, it is not all peaches and cream. It can very much sound that way, and the cash flow is amazing, but there's a lot of work involved. And that's the reason why so many people are not in this space, because they're not willing to jump through those hoops. But to me, I love jumping through hoops because each one you go through, you leave a whole bunch of people behind you. And we all know that someone who's willing to do the work is going to get the reward in the end. So if that is you, the good thing to note is you don't have to be a medical professional. There's a physical license on the house, and that's due to, safety for the seniors. It doesn't need to be ADA compliant, but you want it as close to that as possible. So ramps, guardrails, handrails, just things to keep the seniors safe. Next, you're hiring your licensed administrator, who we've talked about earlier. They're kind of like your property manager. Again, not a nurse or a doctor, just a licensed administrator. And they're hiring your licensed caregivers who do the 24/7 caring. So there are licenses involved, but none of them are necessarily something you need to come to the table with. They're all something that you will either hire or you will receive based on the real estate.
Now, you mentioned the idea that in Arizona, 10 is the number, but that number's different in different places. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go through all 50 states. We have listeners in more than 190 countries. But I think the thing to know is that'll be one of the first things to check. And yes, like I always say, live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. It might make sense to buy a home in your neighborhood so you can keep eyes on it, but it might be that there's better opportunity elsewhere.
I fully agree. And I love that sentiment, because I do think that the closer you are to any business, the more tempting it is to go by and visit and say, oh, I'll just do the landscaping. I'll just, buy the groceries. And now you've built yourself a job. And that's not what I want to do. And I'm pretty sure that's not what the listeners here want to do. So I think actually having a healthy distance where it's almost a little inconvenient for you to go is kind of better than having one right around the corner from you. But definitely based on where you live, you're going to be allowed to have somewhere between 6 up to 16 seniors in the home. And finding that number and choosing your location is the first thing that you need to do when you start investing in this space.
One of the realities that new real estate investors come to pretty quickly is when they buy a single family house that's affordable in a rental neighborhood, and they get the tenant in and they get it all fixed up and they get a property manager, their cash flow is a couple $100 a month. Mm-hmm. And you think, well, how much income do I need? That's a lot of those houses. Yep. One of the exciting things about this space is you don't need as many houses. Having said that, several of your students have gone on to have a second or third or fourth home, and that often brings some additional economies of scale.
Yeah, I really think that scaling to having 3 homes is kind of the sweet spot, because the licensed administrator we talked about, it's not full time for them to oversee one home. So if you only have one home, they're working for you and someone else down the road. But if you have multiple homes, you get to hire them on to oversee all of your systems. And I really think that works best. Also, our homes are set up that they're about 20 minutes apart from each other. So we get to kind of corner the market. And we also have a level 3, 4, and 5 home. So if you visit my level 5 home, which is my nicest home in the best part of town, there's a private chef, and the backyard's massive and the rooms are bigger. And you say, I love this. I really want my mom here, but we can't afford it. Well, I can move you up or down that scale based on location or price point, because I have different locations and price points. So I think that there's kind of some magic to scaling and having the options for people, because not everyone's going to be a cookie cutter. It's the exact same deal. Everyone's looking for something unique and different that fits their family's needs and wants, whether that's financially or location specific. So having variety is helpful, but scaling is definitely the key to this industry.
Well, and also you run into the same thing that any landlord does. If you do your job well, then you have high occupancy. So as much as the home may be wonderful, if all 10 beds are full, then the answer is no if you have another home, right? So many times you can take the same advertising dollar, the same outreach, and be able to have that spread over several of the same style of homes or homes that are different. For instance, you mentioned, the home with each bedroom has its own bathroom. Obviously, that's very desirable. But I've been through a couple of these where that's not the case, where 2 bedrooms share a bathroom. And
Correct.
it's less expensive, certainly, which means it's less income. But there are those different levels.
Absolutely. And I think just options are a beautiful thing. So making sure that it's not always cookie cutter. We do have variety with it. And I'll also say this, if your goal is to have one home so that your mom or dad can live there for free, that's amazing. And you get the cash flow, you get the appreciating asset. That's incredible. We have other students who want to replace their income and they don't want to work anymore. They want to become financially free. So 2 to 4 homes is the right fit for them and their goals. And we have others who are on home number 28 and their goal is to get to 100 homes, package it up and sell it to the hedge funds. The beautiful thing is you can do what fits your wants and needs. Once you learn the system, you know exactly what to do and you can go out and replicate it as many times as you want. So the first part is just getting the first one under your belt. After that, you can easily duplicate this over and over.
Yeah, I'm guessing number 28 is probably a little easier than number 1 was. So that's awesome. Now, in addition to operating some of these yourself, you help people understand this. In fact, for many years, Real Estate Guys listeners have come out to your trainings. You do a few times a year. Tell us what one of those trainings looks like so that people can be comfortable with the fact that they're going to learn exactly what they need to know.
The trainings we host in Phoenix, Arizona, they're 3 days long, and we're really showing you A to Z how to do this, how to find the homes in the right areas, how to staff them, how to fund the entire deal, how to market and, get your new residents coming in, as well as how to hire the incredible care staff that you're going to need. We go through A to Z, things to avoid, things you need to know, the mistakes that could be made, how to do this remotely, set up your asset protection. The list goes on and on. It's a fully comprehensive training that people leave knowing exactly what to do step by step and how to open their care home. And I'm really proud of that training because of what you just said, all of the success that's come from it, the thousands of people who've opened care homes across the country and made it happen from just investing in themselves and investing in that education. And, the Real Estate Guys community is so amazing about knowing that mentorship and coaching can take you further and faster, and paying for speed can be worth it all the way. So I love our 3-day trainings. They're always in Phoenix, Arizona, about every 6 to 8 weeks. And we absolutely love having the Real Estate Guys crew come on out. So if you're listening and this sounds like something that you want to take action on, make sure you grab a ticket to one of our upcoming events.
No better way to really find out what's involved. And hey, let's face it, if after 3 days you go, it's not for me, well, congratulations. It only took 3 days for you to figure that out. I see people that want to save the money, and it takes them years to get it figured out, and they don't get the shortcuts, they don't get the mentorship. So we're big fans, obviously, of being able to take the years of knowledge that you guys have assembled and drill it all down to 3 days. Additionally, if I can brag on your organization for just a little bit, the other thing you've done is you haven't just thought about how can we open up more homes and make more money, and you haven't even just thought about how do we train people to do it. You actually have great relationships with a lot of the key professionals that people need, and businesses and organizations. And once a year, you do a national conference. And most of the folks that come, having been to it several times, most of the folks already are in the business. Maybe they have their first home. Maybe they're in the process of getting their first home. But there are several of those folks you mentioned that have lots. But I would imagine the conference would be a great place for someone to come to who doesn't have a home yet, but is interested. Tell us about this year's conference. It's coming up in November.
Yeah, our assisted living conference is one of my favorite events of the year because, just like you said, I can train people to open their homes, and then they open their homes, and then they're lost in the loneliness of entrepreneurship, and they need that community. And we realized we needed that too. So we created this event to celebrate those care home owners and give them those resources. So it's vendors, speakers, sponsors that maybe you're already using in your home or don't know that you should be using, that are giving you discounts and services when you come to this event. So November 13th through the 15th, it's happening in Glendale, Arizona. It's an annual event, so it's only once per year, but we gather together 600 care home owners and those who are still looking into the space. And if you are looking into the space, it's a fun event to come to because you get to network with those in the industry. So you get to hear what they're experiencing and their struggles and their wins, and really grow and learn in that community. So we definitely invite you guys to come to that, assistedlivingconference.com, and I'd love to see all of you there.
It's what we call proof of concept. It's great to hear about in theory, and hopefully you're excited. I know that Isabelle's got you jazzed about this, and you should be. But to be able to talk with actual people, couples, families who have integrated this and done it, and it's just extraordinary. Now it feels achievable. So before we're done, we'll tell you how you can do all of the above, how you can find out when the next 3-day training is, how you can come to the national conference if that sounds interesting, and how you can just further your education, because you guys have done a good job at creating some of that. We have an awesome report and a video people can have access to. But I want to end on this, Isabelle. Another thing your dad taught me all those years ago was this is an awesome place where you can do well, you can make money, you can be profitable, but you can also do good. And sometimes we own apartment buildings or single family houses or retail, and we don't see the direct impact that our investment has on people. But this is different.
Completely. I don't think I understood the impact that this industry had until I really got deeper into it. You are not only serving these seniors, and you're not only serving your own family by becoming financially free and creating generational wealth, you're serving the caregivers who are used and abused in large facilities and who are leaving the industry because of that abuse that's happening. You're now giving them an opportunity to do the job that they desperately want to do. They want to serve seniors. They just want to be respected and appreciated for the hard work that they're doing. You're changing communities by providing an alternative option to those big boxes. And it just goes, it's from everyone, from your staff to your seniors to the families who can once again be a daughter or son. They don't have to be a caregiver. They get to love on their mom or dad in those last years of life. It's just beautiful all the way throughout. And it's totally an opportunity to do good and do well. The heart paycheck is just as good as that wallet paycheck in this industry. And it's been so eye-opening, so emotional, so enlightening. And I think that there's a big need in this industry. And we don't talk about these things in real estate, but in our space, it's really valid and it's true. And if you're looking for a way to get fulfillment, make an impact, change your community, and change your own life, then this might be ticking your boxes. So I'd love to connect with you more.
Love that. Well, this has been extraordinary as usual. Thanks for being with us, Isabelle.
Thanks for having me on.